All right, can I start?
Yep.
I thought I would share some memories of what it was like to have Saul's father. Perhaps the one that best ties my own story to his is that he was really a hardware guy. He taught electronics for many years. He wired his own house. He built his own computers. He was quite comfortable breadboarding digital circuits. I remember being in awe that he could look at a circuit board and quickly deduce what its purpose was. My interests were different. I was interested in software. I could size up a chunk of code just the way he could size up a chunk of hardware. But it made for interesting interactions. I remember when I was still a teen, we always were fooling around with a computer of one type or another, but they were primitive and kind of unreliable. Some people even say that about modern computers. After all, the common advice when a computer is misbehaving oddly is to reboot. Well, that only makes sense when you have an operating system that would stick around long enough to be rebooted. In the early days, RAM was so limited that applications would often wipe out the operating system. So at the end of a program, the operating system would have to be reloaded anyway. So rebooting wasn't necessary because it effectively happened automatically. Anyway, when our computer started exhibiting odd behavior, Saul would immediately declare that it had to be a hardware problem, bad contacts and dust, flaky memory chip, and he would start with reseating boards into the motherboard bus. Of course, I would say it must be a software problem, and I would turn to look at the code. And in those days, you could look at any application's code. In other words, he had his myopic view, and I had mine. He didn't understand mine, I didn't understand his, but together we made things work. And his relationship with other people was kind of similar. He was able to get things done because he had great partnerships with my mom, his wife, Lenny, who made up for his shortcomings, while he made up for hers. And similarly for Al Katz, who also made up for Saul's shortcomings, enabling the pair of them to do great things like start TCF and keep it going despite new challenges every year. If you missed the talk I gave earlier, I spoke about what it was like trying to puzzle out the hundreds of accounts Saul left behind. He loved to experiment and try out websites and apps. But what I didn't mention is that I had to draw a line how far back to go. Saul kept records going so far back, it was amazing. In his notebooks, and I have them here, he still had the phone numbers for the early bulletin board systems that we used to use, all written down in his neat, precise handwriting. He had handwritten instructions for dip switch settings, how to remap bad disk sectors, all the crazy instructions required to install drivers manually. If you don't know what those days were like, when you installed another board, and I mean installed physically, you had to tell the operating system at a very low level how to interact with it. For example, each board had to be assigned different interrupts or IO locations. These things just weren't standardized. I remember hearing him complain regularly that he couldn't properly manage Windows with his graphic user interface. He would say the better utility programs only run in DOS. But his notebooks were fascinating. He had a dated notation of when he installed Mosaic, the first web browser in the mid-90s, and then Netscape. But he was used to FTP and Gopher and all the things that preceded browsers. He had dated entries for the first time he used Yahoo, the first time he visited Microsoft.com, Amazon, Hotmail, Travelocity, Excite, eBay, Lycos, and the first time he accessed Usenet. And a lot of this stuff at painfully slow speeds. Our first connection was at 110 baud. That means 11 characters a second. When we upgraded to 300 baud modems, it was amazing. We were really cruising. And he recorded and dated all his system crashes, his attempts to recover from system corruption, and so on. Fun stuff. All right, enough with the technical memories. I have a few family photos that I thought I might share. Let me share my screen here. Hope this works. In case you forget what he looked like, here's his lovely smile as he works on some type of wooden block puzzle. He loved puzzles, morning crossword puzzle, afternoon jigsaw puzzle, here with his granddaughter, and the daily computer puzzle. Here, I was about to be called over to help, and I could always tell because the computers were not disassembled when he needed me. Now, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. He certainly did spend a lot of time with his family, especially his wife, Lenny. Marital bliss is having two computers, his and hers. They were very close, about 5 feet apart was the right distance. Okay, I kid. He certainly did spend a lot of time with his family, a nice dinner. I used to drag everyone out for a ritual Thanksgiving Day run, and even though running was not his thing, he loved to come along despite the bitter cold. Every year we did this, and a note about Lenny, every year she would take first place in her age group. Admittedly, it was often because she was the only woman out there in her age group. But all the race officials and other runners there were in awe of her, not Saul. So he was good sport about her getting all the recognition. Here was another race where all the finishers were handed a rose after crossing the finish line. She won her age group there too. Saul's preferred sport was cycling, here with his family and another with his neighborhood friends. Saul also liked to go hiking and sailing, and even built his own boat, which filled up our basement for at least a year, maybe longer. Our basement also had hundreds of different kinds of vacuum tubes. He needed them when the TV needed fixing, which he would do himself. And here's a cycling photo with Lenny when they were stationed in France during the Korean War. And here's a close-up where you can try and see the resemblance. I suppose they must have been in their 20s and very naive. And a high school photo, and going back a little further with his father, maybe 14 years old. And the earliest photo worth showing here with his mom. Moving forward again, he met and married this movie star wife. Had a family with 2 incredibly amazing but modest children. Saul had several careers, eventually finding happiness teaching electronics technology at Union County College, and through that met up with Al Katz. As I said, they co-founded TCF and remained close friends, a good partnership that lasted some 40 plus years. Here there are 2 families share a meal. At the left is me, then Lenny, Al's daughter Tova, and Al's wife Sally, and Saul. During this time, Saul also founded ACG&J. He wrote 16 technical books, served on IEEE standards committees, and he and Lenny published several magazines. It's kind of hard for me to believe my own memories of him doing the layout all manually, pages taped or glued, and all his books were either handwritten or typed on a manual typewriter. My fingers hurt just thinking about it. And Saul continued to raise and enjoy his family. He was very musical, as you might guess from this photo. He could play folk guitar, Spanish guitar, electric guitar, mandolin, and shown here playing banjo. His musical gifts were handed down. Here he listens to the delightful strains of his granddaughter playing the trumpet far too loudly. And I guess inheritance works in both directions. Saul and Lenny traveled widely, going to such places as the Great Wall in China, Machu Picchu in Peru, and the Galapagos Islands. Here he's floating in the Dead Sea, a wonderful experience in buoyancy due to its extremely high salinity, unless you have a cut in your skin. In that case, it sucks. And in the upper right, he and Lenny are about to enter the Great Pyramid in Egypt. Back in the US, Saul eventually retired from teaching, but not one to remain idle. he volunteered as a teacher giving classes for seniors at the Ewing Senior Center. Notice the distinctly non-flat CRT screens. He pushed himself hard, both he and Lenny did in the months leading to each TCF, and the morning of each, they'd be there before any of the speakers to take care of badging them in. And at the end of the day, Saul would be exhausted, his typical posture, but he would rebound afterward for either the traditional TCF banquet, which often had astoundingly good dinners. Speakers were great too, of course. And almost every year we would win door prizes that were remarkably valuable. I encourage you to go back to Al's talk earlier in the day where he focused on TCF and its history. Very fascinating stuff. A few years there were no banquets, and some years it was a multi-day affair, and on the non-banquet day, afterward we would go to Harold's, a Jewish deli in Edison with the most absurdly oversized sandwiches, each of which could feed 4 people or more. My mom's favorite order, a plate of scrambled eggs made with a dozen eggs. I don't recall ever ordering one of their sky-high desserts, similarly gigantically oversized. We were always so stuffed from the entrees. Not sure who had the nerve to order these, but we loved the sight of them. Fortunately, Saul had a good sense of humor about everything, and we did our best to put up with his drive and passions. These books were actually gifts from Lenny, a very perceptive woman. Saul was honored with many awards, but I thought I would highlight this one, TCF's Unsung Hero Award, here being given to both him and Al Katz, with a very touching tribute by Hank Key, another vital and hardworking longtime TCF volunteer. Enough photos. I'll end my spiel with this one showing the embrace of loving partners who I was very fortunate to have as parents for 60 years. I miss you, Dad. Thanks, everybody, for letting me reminisce. Al?
Okay. Hard to say much after that. Saul was such a terrific person. I ran into Saul after I came to I got to say it right because I program now to say the College of New Jersey, but Trenton State College, as it was called back then. And we had a program in electronics, and Saul was running a program in electronics up at Union County College. And we had a lot of feeder students from the county colleges, so I went around to visit them. And one of the places I visited was Union, and where I met Saul. I can say I have not had a lasting relationship with anyone in any of the colleges except with Saul. He made a terrific impression on me. I like to ride bicycles, but not to the extent that Saul had. And I was very impressed because he had a bicycle right in his office there. So that related us immediately. And we maintained communications after I first met him there, and he sent me some brilliant students over the years, which was great. As time progressed, I was looking for ways to make people aware that there was something at Trenton State College besides education, and Saul started up ACGNJ and got me involved there. I attended some meetings. In fact, if I go to the screen share, I pulled a couple of pictures out. Just see. I pulled a couple pictures out of my earlier talk and added a couple to them. And this was the one of the very first, if not the first, ACGNJ meeting, which Sol had organized. And the ACGNJ was, I believe, the first amateur computer club in the probably the world. There was some competition with the group out in not Silicon Valley, but San Francisco, the Bay Club. But there's no question that ACGNJ was the first club to incorporate. So we always note that as made it unique. And then he and I got together, and we decided that, you know, one of the things that would help the community and make them aware of computers and was to have a computer festival. And we didn't anticipate this thing being that, you know, that big a deal. But it turned out to be a much bigger deal than we anticipated. And this was the front page that the computer festival showed up on. And as a result, both of us got and this is a shot, or actually a montage of some of the people that were there. And if you notice right over here, you might recognize the people in this shot. That was Sol and Lenny from the festival, and a lot of other people, some of which sadly we've lost over the years. And this is, Sol got a lot of awards over his time. This was at an early, very soon after the festival. This was an award over at what was the name of this is Atlantic City, the Atlantic City Computer Fair. And Sol got recognition there as one of the great contributors to the computer hobby, which he definitely deserved. I only have a couple more pictures here. This is later on when we were moved up to the New Jersey Convention Center, the two of us there, trying to make these things work. Of course, we had Lenny, who would say all the time, "This is the last year and never again. We're going to run this thing." But somehow it's continued. And one of the things that Sol did, and this is just a shot of the Princeton Users Group, which Sol was quite involved with, and he was also involved with adult education and treating people. I mean, treating people, but teaching people about computers and electronics in general. So those are a few shots of things to add to really, those were great pictures you had, Don, there. And we just had a great relationship. I don't know what to say. It was really a great loss when we had Sol leave us. But I'm sure he's looking down to us and somewhat laughing at that this thing is still going on. Hank, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I just turned my audio on. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My experience with Sol is a little different. I read that New York Times article that you referred to, and I said, "Gee, there's a festival there." So the next year I came out, and I met you and I met Sol, and I don't know, for some reason I struck up a conversation with him, and he said, "Where do you live?" I said, "I live in Queens, New York." He says, "You're from Queens?" And I guess you know, a former New Yorker, that's what he was, and he was a little surprised. And then in the following, during that period for about maybe half a year, he would see me at the ACGNJ meetings on a Friday night, and I would get one of the fellow New York club members to take me out there. because I would work on Friday, and he would pick me up at Columbus Circle, and we go out to Raritan, 1776. That's a famous number, you know that. And Saul says, "Where'd you come from?" Again, he says, "You live in Queens and you came out to an ACGNJ meeting?" I says, "Yes." He says, "How'd you get out here?" He says, "Oh, I had Lenny Sobel drive me out here, but he's not well, and I guess maybe I'll make one or two more meetings." He says, "You know what? If you can't get a ride, give me a call." And I guess that's where the relationship really struck up, because he figures, who's nuts enough to come in from Queens, take public transportation all the way out to Princeton Junction and hook up a ride from there. And well, we got to be pretty good friends. And when I went through his bio, yeah, it reminds me of everything I know about him. He was he did everything, and whatever he did, most of it he did well. And one thing that struck me is that the word that was never used was, he's a Renaissance man. He did everything that he wanted to do. And I said, you know what? There's one thing that he probably doesn't have that most people have. He doesn't have a bucket list. If there was a bucket list, it goes away right away. He attacks it right away. He doesn't wait for, he's not one of those where one of these days I will, one of these days I'll get to it. He just does it. And that makes him very special. And I remember one time I'm talking to him. He's saying, there are times when he would, as you know, Al, and you've done it with him, you would drop me off at the station to catch the last train to get back to Penn Station in New York. And one day he said to me, we're waiting in the car for the train to come in, and the train was a little late. And he said, there's a convention that maybe you should attend. I said, what convention? He says, it's out in Valley Forge. Valley Forge? What kind of convention? Come on, you know what? Bring Jean, that's my wife. She says, bring her along with you. Oh, well, what's so special? I said, well, I have Lenny there too. It turned out to be a quilting convention out in Valley Forge. And you know what it says to me about Saul is that he's more than just what he wants to do. He thinks about others too. He knew that Lenny was into quilting, and hopefully, she's listening to this. And actually, it was not a bad day at all. At first, when to go to Valley Forge from Queens, that's quite a long ride. I thought I would fall asleep, at the convention center. And as you know, when you go to any kind of convention, you don't have the same, well, you know what? It's mainly about a theme, but there's always some side shows, And one guy had a scroller saw, and it got me interested. So I wound up getting a whole bunch of power tools. Not that I use them often. I didn't want to cut my fingers off, But he was really, really fun to be with. And then I also remember one time he said to me, I heard you on the air and you were talking about this Nikon scanner that you have. I says, yes. And really, you tell me that this scanner could, like, if you have dust on it, you don't have to worry, it'll take care of the dust. And if it's underexposed, it can take the negative and properly correct it. Or if it's overexposed, he can properly correct it. I says, yes. He says, can I borrow it? I said, sure, no problem. And he says that he asked me, how long does it take to scan a negative? I said, 50 seconds. And he says, oh, I'll have it back to you within a week. I said, no, Sal, it'll be longer than that. He says, why? I said, you know what? You're going to be correcting a lot of negatives, okay? Make a long story short, he did, he returned about a year later, and he said, boy, I didn't realize how much work goes into it. So I just want to have leave a word with Don and the family, is that through his eyes, he took a lot of pictures, and you may not recognize some of the scenery or some of the faces, but that's your dad. That's the way he looked at the world. And it doesn't matter whether you're familiar with the site or the people, but this is what, you hear his voice, you know what it sounds like. You've been out with him, so you know what he does. Now this is something that you could see through his eyes. Unfortunately, I had a big fire in 1998. I lost all my negatives, and I had a backup site that got on fire too. So I've been taking some of the pictures at TCF. I'll try to gather them. There's somewhere around here, but I'll get to it. But I just want to tell you, you know, when you asked me to join you on this segment, Al, I'm here to celebrate his life. It's he was a good person to know, good person, good friend, and how the heck he, you know, I have to be honest. He treated me like a landsman, if you know what I mean by that. Al, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I actually probably should turn this back to Don, but we can all do this together, all three of us.
Okay.
You know, you're the celebrity here.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. You know what? It's I think the reason why I got along with Saul is that I am really. Most people don't realize that I am the introvert and he's the extrovert. And Don said something that made sense to me. I started off as a software person. I wrote software. He was more the hardware guy, and now you know, when I think back, every time he called me about the operating system, that's software. That's why he called me.
I just want to point out, Hank, that Saul listened to you every week on your radio show. He loved that show. He loved listening to you, and he felt like he learned so much.
Are you kidding me? I learned from the listeners. You know, actually, I really do. I learned from the listeners by hearing their questions, and not to be embarrassed the next week, I did my homework.
Well, you know, Don, one of the things that you had there, and I hope Lenny's not going to get mad at me here, is right, but she has Saul's guitar, and she's been looking for a good home for it and has not found it. And I'm just going to mention this, maybe someone here who might be interested. That it's a shame not to see it. I'm totally non-musical. Fortunately, my wife, who's in the audience, is very musical, but she's not a big guitar player. One time, well, I got her lessons.
But by the way, if I spent years learning to play an instrument, I could not get past it. I just don't have the musical aptitude. Oh, by the way, one thing I did want to mention with Lenny, I just hope that she's on with us and she has a hot water in the thermos bottle to drink from.
Yeah, good one, Hank. Yeah, I will point out that when I told Lenny that, Hank, you were going to be in this session, she said, good luck getting a word in edgewise because Hank will just monopolize it and talk for an hour straight.
That's not true at all. Actually, you know, one of the things I learned from broadcasting is that when you interview someone, they think they had a tremendous recording with you, and all you do is you start it, let them talk, don't interrupt them, don't ambush them, and after they do all the talking, boy, that was a great talk I had.
I'm going to suggest that we open this up and let other people, Don, myself, Hank, and I know, as Don says, Hank as the celebrity is, will go on.
No, I am not. Now, come on.
Does anyone else want to say anything about their experiences?
Can you unmute them?
All they have to do is unmute. I don't think there's anything that's stopping them from unmuting, anybody from unmuting. So that everybody should be able to just say whatever they want or remember. I can remember, you know, bicycling and with Sal and going on a bicycle and I couldn't keep up with him. And that's where I learned that I needed stents. I figured I could keep up with Sal, but well, he was tough, but not that big on there.
By the way, Don, I just want to say that, you know, there are times I'm sitting there at the waiting for the station train to come in, and when two guys are sitting in the car, they talk about family, and he's always talking about family, and you know, he's a family man, and the two primary things he talks about is your daughter Kenna and Lenny. By the way, I just remember that one time I'm at the Princeton Junction station, and I got off on the wrong end, and your father and mother had to meet me, and I finally meet up with them, and it was good. And then your father turned to your mother and says, where did I park the car?
Yeah, by the way, I see my sister is also with us today. I don't want to put her on the spot, but she's certainly welcome to chime in with stories of her own. And I see Rebecca has graced us with her presence as well. She always has stories.
Yes, I was going to chime in with one since I'll say something and then let your sister talk.
Lee Katz. I don't know that person.
Oh, there you go.
Cass is one of our past Computer Hobbyists of the Year awards, and his wife. You want to say something, Cass, and then we'll get to Rebecca.
Yeah, go ahead, Cass.
We always enjoyed. We would come and we'd get the tickets, and Lenny was there, and everybody was there. So we have been attending it since, God knows, I think since the TCF started. Every year we're coming. Now we are in Minnesota in one of the senior places, and
A little louder.
we have the privilege to be able to listen to you and also talk. And I hope somebody else took over my GPS talk. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cass.
And Ruth also gave, I remember, a talk about, what did it, this was about the, some, about fractals. I remember we both,
Fractals?
yeah, we both went to the show, spent about $1,000 for a plotter, and we used it once or twice. So this was one of the times we used it. It's for a fractal talk.
Yeah, a lot of good memories. I guess we cut you off, Rebecca. Let you.
No, I can talk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the couple of things from TCF with Saul. You know, being on the board for a number of years. You know, things could get pretty feisty. There'd be arguments. People would be, you know, we should do this, we shouldn't do this, you know, blah blah blah. But Saul really was a very, at least what I saw of him, and Lenny too. They were very even keeled. They didn't really get into the fray of some of these discussions. Maybe they applied influence outside of the meetings, but I suspect they did. But I, you know, you know, the things can get pretty heated, and you know, I think that was extremely admirable. One of the other things from TCF, I remember when we got that MakerBot 3D printer for IEEE, and I brought that to the first time to TCF with Kevin Meredith, who was helping me on that project. And we were in that small room, which had actually at TCNJ actually had a couple of huge 3D printers, but this was like the first sort of home type style one. And Lenny and Saul were right up at the front, like everybody was squashing in, and they were really both excited about it, as if it was just the next greatest thing to slice bread. And Saul really made sure that we continued. We brought that printer eventually even to, there it is. That's the great picture of that. That was, oh my goodness. I'm so glad you have that picture. That was so great. The one on the right is actually a hand built one. And then on the left is the MakerBot one. And yeah, I remember that vividly, like they both wanted to know every detail about this, and then made sure that we got a bigger rooms, and we did that demo at least 4 or 5 TCFs, quite a few TCF years. We did that, and also at the Integrated STEM Education Conference and some IEEE meetings, and it was just a great opportunity to show that off. And one thing I want to also say, you mentioned about Saul getting involved with the seniors, and he wrote me in for that, and I think another talk. But I gave a big demo for at the senior center with Saul, and Lenny was there too, and that was instrumental to get the seniors interested. They were just so fascinated with this technology, which it was fascinating technology. I mean, I loved it myself too. So that was really great. That was just such a great time, and I just wanted to recollect about that. I'm glad you have that picture, the back of my stringy hair, after being in that sweaty room for probably 3 hours. But anyway, yeah, just those types of memories. I do remember his avid interest in guitar, and occasionally, come to like a musical event, like when Sal was singing. I think they might have even come to one event at Adith Israel. Just a whole diversity of interests and talents, the both of them, which is just so great. So I'm just so glad I was able to share those great times with them.
Thank you, Rebecca. Can we get some more comments or good, Don?
Don, you have to unmute.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, this is from a number of years ago, but I remember it well. Saul was responsible for sparking my interest, my lifelong interest in computers and software. I was with, I think, Don and Lenny and Saul at Lenny's college where she taught. I don't remember which one, but anyway, I spent a couple of hours playing a text-based football game on an ASR 33 terminal, it clunking away, and Saul sticks his head in to check on me, and I asked rather naively, I don't know, maybe we were 13 or 14 then, I asked rather naively, how does the computer know what to do? And he said, oh, just type list. And that was it. I was hooked from that point. So that's my remembrance about Saul.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else here? Eric, can I get you to say something? Eric is one of our major contributors. If Saul was here, he would be saying, thank you, Eric. He's done a tremendous amount over the years for TCF.
I remember 2 articles in the ACGNJ News. And one was, they were both done by Saul. One was building a computer for under $1,000, which back in those days was a big achievement. Now you can buy a Chromebook for $200, but you can buy a laptop for much less than $1,000. Another was an article, how to use an electronic spreadsheet for scientific purposes, scientific calculation, which I hadn't really thought of. And I miss Saul too, because his advice about how to do desktop publishing was very valuable, because he had that experience with the magazines. Told me that white space was as important as the content itself.
I wonder how many people here know that Saul sold his magazine twice.
Yep, I remember that.
I'm the best one to tell that story. Maybe someone can tell that story better than I can. But he got a great deal from Creative Computing, I guess, Ziff Davis, to buy his magazine, and then they drove it into the ground. So he got it back for I don't know what, You know, they literally gave it to him back. So he built the thing back up again. And then I forget, someone else, was it the same? As if Davis buy it from him again? I don't know that, but I know he sold it again.
Our balloon was there.
Yeah.
This
Uh,
balloon-
I don't think they bought it back or were given it back. He just started it anew. It had a different title and different format. And I think they sold it. I can't remember the name of the publisher, but it was a different publisher that they sold it to, who also didn't understand how to handle it properly. I see my mother, Lenny, is connected, so she could probably fill in the details. And I see my sister is waiting patiently as well. She has her hand up. So, Sue, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you everybody for doing this. I did spend some time crying, and I really, really wish I was with the rest of my family right now, particularly my mother. She's in New Jersey, I'm in South Carolina. This has been a really hard time being separated this long. And I've mentioned her several times that I think my father would have had an extraordinarily hard time getting through this COVID pandemic. So there's some blessing that he didn't have to suffer through this. I did want to reminisce a little bit about what it was like to be his daughter. He really thought I could do anything and taught me to do things that other girls didn't get taught. I learned how to use tools. I learned how to solder when I was a little kid, and it made it really easy for me to have the confidence to go ahead and go into science. He really pushed me. I remember so many times when I was afraid to try things, whether it was intellectual or physical, and he was pushing, I was screaming no, and he was pushing and pushing me. So I'm really, I hope, a credit to his persistence and support for all the things that girls weren't supposed to do. Again, thanks everybody so much for doing this.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else?
Al,
Yes,
can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, in spite of the name popping up as Judy, I'm Fred Kegel.
Oh,
I have to say about Saul that with all that he initiated, all that he accomplished, he was a very, very humble individual. He did not boast. However, I made a mistake. I was president of BCUG, the Brookdale Computer Users Group, and we were having problems. I think there was a transition from Bug 80 from the Tandy Radio Shack computer to the PC. And I made the mistake of approaching Saul about merging with ACG-NJ. And I made the mistake of saying that we started at about the same time, that the Brookdale Computer Users Group started at the same time as ACG-NJ. And he said, oh no, we were the first. ACG-NJ was the first. And you know, I got a chuckle out of that, but he did it in such a way that afterwards, after we had this meeting, we were outside. He said, you know, maybe, you know, we should just go our separate ways and pursue our fields separately. And, you know, that's what we did. And that's what I remember about Saul, just being very humble, not a boastful person. And that goes for you guys too. I mean, everything that you guys have initiated has inspired us. I was just a 35-year-old when I first got involved with computers. And here I am going to this meeting with thousands of people at ACGNJ and TCF, and I didn't know a bit from a bite. But Saul and you guys, I mean, it started with little things. Fortunately, it started with little things. I mean, today's talks were over my head, to be honest with you, a lot of the talks. But back then, things were simple, I thought. You know, you're talking about just a little bit of RAM and reboots and connecting this wire to that wire and getting lowercase descenders on a chip. To me, they were simple things compared to what we're talking about today with AI and all this stuff. So I really have to say to Don, and I forget your sister's name, to be honest with you, I have to say thank you, Saul. Thank you for inspiring me, getting me turned on to computers. I eventually started a computer school for children, and that evolved into computer training for adults when the schools caught up with me. And I really have to thank all of you guys for the inspiration that has lasted for me now 40 years.
Thank you, Fred. You bring back memories to me. You talk about memory, and this is before I know Saul, but I remember going to a lecture and they were coming out with solid state memory. And the lecturer said, you know, in a year or so, we'll have this down so we can have 1 bit per dollar. Anyhow, let's see, who else in here? I don't want to cut anyone off or cut anyone short off. Clark.
I could just say a few words. I guess around 2000, I became president of the Princeton Users Group. And Saul was our program manager, which made life so easy for me. All I had to do is welcome people to the meeting. We met at the Lawrence Library. And then Saul would take over, introduce the speaker. And I think that last picture, I'm so glad you showed it too, because I felt bad that I sent it so late and I didn't expect you to see it till after the show. But you can see Saul was handing out raffle tickets. Once in a while, he'd arrange to get some sort of gift from somebody, and we would raffle off. So Saul was such an influence to me personally, to so many other people. I also worked with him at the Learning Center here in Ewing. We both taught sometimes together. And we would have lunch for the class over at the diner nearby. And I missed that because this is for like 5 years, almost every month we'd have a lunch together with some other people. And I was thinking this morning, Don, when you were talking about the digital thing, I was trying to remember if there was any secrets that he told me that you needed to know, and I can't think of anything. He never told me where he kept money. So I hope you find what he did with it. It's probably all in Bitcoin someplace. And I know too, when the festival came around, he was so proud that you talks and stuff like that. And he also talked about visiting you and visiting Susan. And family was so important to him. And Lenny was such a joy in his life. So I got to also say before I stop talking, once I get going, I can't stop, is you. And I see David Saul is on here, and, you know, Hank and Al. You have affected, I think, maybe 100,000 people in terms of attending your classes, the computer groups, the festival. I mean, you guys, there's so much you can be proud of, and I hope we keep this going. Certainly, I hope to be back here for the 50th one and so forth, maybe even to the 100th one. So thank you so much for this tribute and this remembrance. It's so meaningful to so many people, as your lives and his lives was. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Disconnect.
Oops.
I don't have it connected.
Jim, I see Jim Springer here, who I know, and I'm sure Sal would remember. He always brings chocolate cookies to the computer festival. Jim, if your microphone's on, Springer, were you one of Sal's students?
I'm not. I was not. I really. It was the only time I would ever get together was at these conventions. Basically, I just hung back and listened to the old timers.
All the time. It's beeping, that's all. I can't stop.
I'm sorry. Can anyone?
I got two people on the same time.
I'll turn off.
No, no, you can stay there just for a second, Jim. You have a chocolate cookie with you?
As a matter of fact, the kitchen is right next door to where I am,
Okay. That's,
but you're not getting any this time.
I'm so sorry. Have enjoyed it. Ruth, did you want to say something?
Ruth, you want to say something?
Oh, did you ask me?
Yeah.
Cass and I have been with the computer club. Well, we were with BCUG for many years, and we knew Saul from way back when. We went to Trenton programs and other programs, and we did a lot of work with computers. We won some kind of a prize. I don't have it in front of me because until today,
Hobbies of the year.
Hobbyist of the year
yeah.
at one point.
Yes.
I don't
nice
remember
stuff.
how many years ago it was, but we've a lot of the names are familiar to me that I see on the thing. But until yesterday, we didn't realize that TCF was going on currently, and so we decided to tune in today, and that's why I don't have all my facts straight. But we remember Saul well, and we remember so many of you well. And Fred Cagle and I were the leaders of the Excel workshop at BCUG for quite a while too. And I see Fred is here also. So very nice opportunity to honor Saul in this way. And I want to say thank you.
And I'm going to correct myself because I remember, which was a little unusual, but in your case, I remember very appropriate that both you and Cass got the Computer Hobbyist of the Year award jointly.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting close. Anyone else want to say anything before we are going to close down for our keynote presentation very shortly? Hank?
Yeah, I just want to say something that, Saul, he had a way of knowing people, putting people together, and, solving situations. I remember a number of years ago, we had Richard Stallman as a speaker. He was very difficult. And he said, he came over to me, he says, you're having a hard time with him. Go talk to Rebecca. Rebecca will take care of it.
I did smooth that out, and amazingly was able to smooth that out. Stallman is, I don't know, but whatever. He's a savant, but everything else that goes along with that. And then Stallman and I still communicate. So.
You still do?
Oh yeah. He was sort of heaved out of MIT. He was actually living in his office at MIT for many years, and it was just prior to COVID actually. And it's a very good thing that they forced him out of the building because with COVID, But so we still stay in touch on technical issues. But yeah, I will never forget that. I'm like, oh my goodness, how he was going to walk out of TCF. And
he was going to walk out, and Saul said, if anyone can take care of it. So he recognized your talent.
Yeah, I knew him from before. I don't even know if I knew Stallman face to face, but Stallman early on had emailed me and was like all up in arms about, like any time you're talking to him, if you use the word a wrong way, he'll just get on you. So we've exchanged numerous emails. He definitely knew me. I also was fond of brunettes, so that was not what we were looking for, but but you know, actually, Lenny will remember that he was sort of following me around also during the TCF. But I used that to my advantage to get him to stay and give the talk. And we wound up sitting at the same table with him at dinner. So John DeGood was at that same table, I believe, also. So yeah, very entertaining, very entertaining. But yes, I'm really glad that we worked that out. That would have been probably your only time when the keynote speaker walks out, refused to speak.
Actually, that wasn't Rebecca. Well, he gave the talk, but some of you who were here for a long time remember that we had what's his name from 73 magazine.
Wayne Green. Wayne Green.
Thank you. Wayne Green was our speaker, and Wayne had Kiloboard magazine, and I got to do this quickly.
Oh, wow.
Wayne was there, and we were trying to keep Wayne happy so he would promote and cover us. And I even gave him an extra dessert. And Wayne got into a discussion with Sal, and I don't want to say anything negative about Wayne, though you can say things, but Sal did not appreciate people sometimes who were not totally honest and with their positions. And he and Wayne got into an argument. Wayne pulled all his people out, left, boom.
Whoa!
Left the computer festival.
So there was a precedent of people.
And we never had anything nice for Wayne again.
No. And Richard Stallman, we should keep him far away as well.
Oh, Richard Stallman. Yeah, I just joined here. Yeah, I heard there were some interesting
great stories. Just, you know, these are just special times that, you know, we all work together like, okay, now what are we gonna do?
Al, I have just a comment because I don't know if she wants to comment at all. I guess Lenny succeeded in no more banquets, huh?
At least as long as the COVID remains. So if we get to a point, I think a lot of people would like to have some sort of, I always say food is a lubricant to things, and we have that sort of get together again. I want to move things around. Oh, I'm not around, but along, because our keynote I see is here. And we have one thing that we want to do before the keynote talks, and I don't want to waste time. Is Brenda gonna? Brenda, are you here?
I believe it's Wendy.
Yes, I'm here,
Yeah.
but Wendy should be here also.
Yeah, I'm also here.
Okay, but Wendy is the one who's gonna. Wendy, who's now president of the ACGNJ, correct, Wendy?
Yes.
So I'm going to turn it over to you for a brief special program here.
Okay. So anyway, I pretty much started dealing with David Saul when I started coming over back 8.5 years ago, and had a real good time, and I learned a lot from him. Miss him dearly. Wish he was still here, but I know he's watching over us.
No. David,
No.
Oh, yeah,
David is still.
Saul Levis.
Oh, so
And now we're looking at.
Is
you
he
know I'm tired. Sorry about that, guys.
is David Saul on here? Because
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't see his name.
He was.
I
It looks like he checked out.
oh,
But
he's here.
he's okay. He's hanging in.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, is he on this meeting?
Yeah, he was a second ago. David, are you still here?
He was, but I think he might have left.
Oh no.
Gonna give him an award to?
No, I'm not seeing him.
He's not here.
Okay, let's. We got still a few minutes before the keynote starts, but I'm going to try and call David. And see if I
Yeah, I'm not seeing him on here.
Yeah, he was right there.
He was.
He was earlier, but he's not now.
It was through this. I guess he thought it was over and was. Hang on a second. Well, I'm gonna mute someone.
Hey, Hank.
Yes.
Yep, over here in the upper left corner.
I see you in the lower row.
Everybody said
It's all over the place.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, so am I, just barely, but I'm happy.
Well, I must say, it's good to see everyone. And it's been 2 years, I think, since a lot of us saw each other last at the last in-person TCF.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, I think by next year, I think we should be back to in-person meetings.
I think we have a good chance.
Well, hopefully it'll be in person, but also Zoom, since I'm in Florida and enjoying.
Well, yes, and you know that, you know, one thing for our Garden State Java group, you know, we've considered is, you know, we've had some pretty good success since we rebranded and incorporated as their own 501c3. You know, we've had people attending from around the world, but, you know, once we go back to in-person meetings, you know, how are we going to capture them? And that's something we're going to start working on sooner rather than later. So, you know, our first in-person meeting, we'd like to have it a solution to do a hybrid approach.
I've got an interesting idea about that, because I've learned how to feed a user OBS to feed Zoom, and you can put up to you can get up to 4 cameras into OBS.
Nice.
Yeah, that
Nice.
might work.
Yeah, I know that was mentioned. I know I've just heard of it. I don't know how to implement it, but I will tell you this: there was a conference by the Atlanta Java Group. They have every year called Dev Nexus, and this year's they just made it last year because it was in February. So this year was all virtual, and it was just, I have to say, it was outstanding. Just they created a big studio. There's Barry the Bird is the word. Just talking about Dev Nexus and, you know, going back to a hybrid approach. So I don't know what they did. We didn't get a chance to, you know, talk to them about what they, you know, how they implemented that. But I've never seen anything quite so good as what they pulled off.
OBS is really powerful, and it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it,
as long as you have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
With it.
Yeah. So you know, Barry is one of our directors of the, you know, of our group. So we have a total of 4. But yeah. So we'll see, you know, how that works.
Yeah, I had set up a whole OBS thing for today, but then I wasn't sure how it was going to look if people didn't have my video as their main screen. And
the trick is, actually, believe it or not, in the case of what we're doing right now, you could feed OBS directly into Zoom.
Yeah, and I do that, but the problem is if people are in a different view, I'm not the main video like it would be when I'm sharing a screen. So
you share the screen.
Al's trying to get our attention here.
Okay, time to go listen to the keynote.
Okay. Well, no, I think David Saul is with us now, I believe.
Hi.